Here's a sentence I hear at least once a week from someone in their 40s or 50s who just got knocked out of a role they thought was safe. They say, I haven't looked for a job in 15 years. I don't even know where to start. And my first response is always the same. Good. Because if you tried to search the way you did 15 years ago, you'd fail. Not because you're less capable, because the game changed and nobody sent you the new rule book. The resume format changed, the way companies screen candidates changed, the way networks actually work changed, and the thing that used to be your biggest asset, 20, 25, 30 years of experience, can now get you screened out before a human being ever sees your name if you present it the wrong way. Today, I'm giving you the rule book, not motivational fluff about trusting the process, an actual sequence, how to reposition what you built, how to, how to activate a network that's gone cold, how to beat the system that's working against you by default, and how to walk into a room or a Zoom wearing pants for once as the obvious answer, not just another applicant. Full disclosure before we start. I have made basically every mistake I'm about to warn you against. I've sent the vague keep me in mind message and then acted shocked when nobody kept me in mind. So think of this less as advice from on high and more like a guy showing you exactly where he tripped so you don't have to fail the same way. This is live without an expiration date. Let's get into it. If this is your first time with the show, welcome. This is a space for people in the second half of their careers who are dealing with disruption, a layoff, a role that quietly stalled out, a forced reinvention you didn't ask for. If that's you, you're in the right place. Today, we're talking about the job search. And I want to start by naming something a lot of people feel but don't say out loud. The search is harder this time. And it's not because you're worse at your job, it's because the entire infrastructure of hiring shifted underneath you while you were busy doing the job you had. Three things changed. Let's name all three right up front because the rest of this episode is built around them. Number one, the screening layer changed. Applicant tracking systems, AI resume scoring, LinkedIn algorithm. None of that existed in its current form the last time a lot of you searched seriously. You could write a great resume in 2010 and it would land on a desk and somebody would read it. That's often not what happens anymore. Software reads it first, and unlike your old hiring manager, it does not care that you once single-handedly saved the department during a system migration. It just wants to know if the word budgeting appears enough times. Number two, the value conversation changed. Companies aren't hiring years of experience the way they used to. They're hiring problems solved. If your resume and your interview answers lead with tenure, how long you've been doing this, you're speaking last decade's language to an audience that's asking a different question. Number three, the bias layer is real, and it's mostly unspoken. Age bias in hiring exists. Yeah, it's illegal, but it happens anyway, usually wearing a disguise. Culture fit, not the right growth trajectory, overqualified. We're going to talk about it directly today because pretending it isn't there just wastes energy you need for strategy. Here's how we're going to move through this. 4 phases in order, because doing them in order is the number one reason a search Doing them out of order is the number one reason a search stalls out. The, the four phases are reposition, reactivate, beat the system, then walk into the interview like you own it. And I want to plant one idea early because I want it sitting in the back of your mind for the whole episode. You are not competing with 25-year-olds. You're competing with other people exactly like you, same age, same background, same disruption. You simply haven't, who simply haven't done this work yet. That is a competition you can win. So let's start. Reposition your value. Before you touch your resume, before you update a single line on LinkedIn, here's a step almost everybody skips. And skipping it is the number one reason a mid-career job search comes out generic. That step is an honest internal audit of what you actually did and why it mattered. Not a list of duties, not a job description rewritten in the past tense, an audit. Here's the reframe I want you to make, and I want you to actually sit with this one. Stop thinking, what did I do? Start thinking, what problem did I repeatedly get hired to solve and for whom? A 25-year career is not one story. It's usually 3 or 4 recurring problems that kept following you from role to role because you kept getting a reputation for solving them. Your job right now is to find that thread. Let's do the exercise together right now, out loud, the way I walk a client through it. Pull up your last 4 or 5 roles or major projects, either literally or just hold them in your head. For each one, ask yourself 3 questions. What was broken or at risk before I got there? What did I actually change? And what was different when I left that wouldn't have been different without me? Do that for 4 roles and then step back and look for the pattern, not the titles, the pattern underneath the titles. Maybe it's I get sent in to fix teams that have lost trust in their leadership. Or maybe it's I get called in when growth stalled and nobody could explain why. Or maybe it's I'm the person who turns a chaotic department into a predictable one. Whatever it is, that pattern is your actual positioning, not your job title. The pattern. Now, let's talk about the trap almost every mid-career candidate falls into, and I want to name it directly because you probably heard this word about yourself already, overqualified. Here's what that word actually means almost every time it's used. It means we can't tell what specific problems you solve for us. Or, so you're filling So we're filling in the blank on our own fear that you'll be bored, that you'll be too expensive, that you're the flight risk the second something better comes along. Overqualified is rarely about your qualifications. It's about a vague pitch. The fix is not to hide your experience. Don't do that. Don't shrink. The fix is to make the value so specific, so current that the conversation shifts. Instead of the hiring manager silently wondering, will they leave? They're thinking, how fast can this person help me? Which brings me to the second piece of this, and it's one people miss constantly: currency, not competency, currency. Mid-career candidates don't usually get passed over because they lack skill. They get passed over because their materials read like they stopped learning somewhere around 2015. So here's a concrete instruction, and I want you to actually do this one, not just nod along. For every single role on your resume, name one thing you learned, adopted, or changed in how you worked in the last 24 months? A tool, a method, a certification, a shift in how you lead a team, one line. That single moves that single move signals relevance more than almost anything else you can do on a resume. I want to get personal here for a second because I don't think this advice means much coming from someone who's never lived it. Also, I've already embarrassed myself once during this episode, so I might as well keep going. I went through a stretch, call it close to a decade, if I'm honest about it, where my own sense of value got shaky. Not because the work stopped mattering, because for years in the roles I was in, my value was assumed by me, my bosses, my peers, and even my direct reports. Nobody made me argue for my value. It was just understood. And then circumstances changed. I was laid off, and suddenly I had to relearn how to say out loud to a stranger in a room why I mattered. That is a genuinely disorienting skill to relearn in your 40s or 50s. A little like being a decorated veteran of a war nobody else remembers, trying to explain to a 29-year-old recruiter why that matters to their Tuesday. I'm not telling you that story so that you feel sorry for me, and I'm definitely not going to wrap it up with a neat bow and tell you that it all worked out perfectly on schedule because it didn't, and it doesn't for most people. I'm telling you because if you're sitting there right now, feeling that it's strange, even a little humiliating, to have to readjust 25 years of proven value to someone half your age with a nicer LinkedIn banner than you, I want you to know that that feeling is normal. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means you're doing something you haven't had to do in a long time. That's it. So here's where this segment lands. Your resume doesn't need more lines. It doesn't need another bullet point restating a job description. It needs a sharper argument, 3 or 4 recurring problems you solve backed by something in evidence that you learned something in the last 2 years aimed at a specific role instead of a general audience. Do that work before you write a single word of to the actual document. Everything downstream gets easier once that argument is clear. Next, reactivate your network. Let's talk about your network because I want to reframe a word that's gotten kind of stale, right up there with synergy and circle back, words that make me want to lie down. Network. Most mid-career professionals already have a network, a real one. Decades of colleagues, former bosses, people you mentored, vendors, industry contacts. You are not starting from zero. What's actually happened is that network went dormant. Nobody's fault. That's just what happens when you're not job searching for 10 or 15 years. Relationships go quiet. Your job right now is not to build a network from scratch, it's reactivation. Let's talk about why the obvious move, the cold hi, I'm looking for opportunities, keep me in mind message almost always fails. It fails because it puts the entire burden of thought on the other person. You've handed them a vague, open-ended task. Think of something for me. Nobody wants to do that. People love to help. They just don't want to do your thinking for you. So the whole game here is making it easy for someone to help. Here's the sequence. 4 steps. If you want to actually use this, not just file it away as a nice idea. Step 1, reconnect before you need anything. This week, Reach out to 5 dormant contacts, people you haven't talked to in a year or more, with 0 ask attached, a genuine comment on something they posted, a congratulation on a promotion you noticed, a simple, hey, I saw this and thought of you. That's the entire message. No ask, just warmth. Step 2, the specific ask, not a vague one. Once a relationship is warmed back up, and it doesn't take long, sometimes just one exchange, the ask should never be, let me know if you hear of anything. That's the version that gets forgotten within an hour. The specific version sounds like this. I'm specifically looking at operations leadership roles at regional financial institutions. Is there anyone in your world doing that kind of work who I can grab for 15 minutes? Specificity does the thinking for the other person. It turns I'll keep you in mind, which almost never happens, into, oh, actually, yes, I know exactly who that is. Step 3, give before you get. This is where mid-career professionals have a real underused advantage. You have decades of favors, introductions, and expertise sitting in reserve. In at least a third of your reactivation conversations, lead with, how can I help you? Before you get to your own situation. It's not a trick. It's not manipulation. It generally changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. And people remember who showed up that way. That reputation follows you into the next ask and the one after that. Step 4, track it like a pipeline. I'll be blunt. Most searches don't fail from a lack of effort. They fail from a lack of a system. You reach out to 12 people over 6 weeks, you lose track of who you already followed up with, momentum dies quietly. Build something simple. Name, last contact, date, plan, touch, next plan, touch, the specific ask you made, current status. A spreadsheet is completely fine. It doesn't need to be sophisticated. It needs to exist. Now, let's talk about the emotional resistance underneath all this, because I know it's there for a lot of you listening. There's a real embarrassment that shows up after a layoff or a forced transition, a feeling that reaching out is imposing on people like you're a burden, like everybody's too busy for you. I want to push back on that directly. Most people, when surveyed honestly, don't regret being asked for help. They regret not being asked. You reaching out with something specific isn't an imposition. For most people you contact, it's a genuine break in their day to feel useful to someone they respect. One more underused tool here, the informational interview. And I want to point out something specific to your position in your career. You likely have real standing right now to request 15 minutes with people 2 levels removed from you. A VP at a company you admire, a board member, someone senior in an industry you're targeting, in a way that a 25-year-old simply doesn't have yet. Your track record earns you that 15 minutes. Use it. Don't sit on that advantage out of politeness. So here's where this segment lands. Your network isn't gone. It's not damaged. It's asleep. Your job this week, not someday, this week, is to wake it up with something specific enough for someone to actually act on. Let's take a quick pause here. If you're listening to this because you're in the middle of your own search right now, not someday, but right now, I want you to do one thing before the next segment of this session starts. Pull up your phone, Pick one dormant contact, send them one message with zero ask attached. Do it now, not after the episode. But of course, if you're driving right now, pull over first. I'll wait. Okay, let's talk about the machines standing between you and the next opportunity. I call this beat the systems. Let's talk plainly about something that genuinely is new territory for a lot of you. Most mid-sized and large companies now run your resume through an applicant tracking system, an ATS, and increasingly some form of AI-based screening before a human being ever lays eyes on it. If the last time you searched seriously was 10 or 15 years ago, this entire layer of process didn't exist or existed in a much cruder form. I want to demystify it because most of the advice out there about this is either panic induced or useless. Let's keep it practical. Here's what is actually happening under the hood in plain language. The software parses your resume looking for keywords tied to the job description, specific skills, titles, tools, certification. It's also often standardizing your formatting behind the scenes, which matters more than people realize. A visually impressive resume with columns and graphics and text boxes can get mangled in that parsing process, sometimes dropping entire sections without you ever knowing. And many of these systems weigh keyword density and recency, meaning older experience, even genuinely relevant older experience, often gets scored lower unless the same skill or theme is echoed somewhere more recent on the page. So here are 5 concrete moves. Write these down like before. If you're driving, come back to this part of the episode when you're at your laptop. 1, mirror the language of the job posting, not keyword stuffing, genuine mirroring. If they say cross-functional stakeholder management, and your resume says worked with other departments, you are very likely losing a match you should be winning. Use their specific words for the specific skills because that's frequently, literally, what's being matched behind the scenes. 2, use a clean, single column format for anything going through an ATS. Save the creative resume design, the columns, the graphics, the personal branding, the little headshot in the corner, like it's a dating profile, for a portfolio site or your LinkedIn, not the document being run through parsing software. I say this with love, having once submitted a resume with a decorative border that I'm fairly certain got read by the ATS as a barcode. Boring formatting on this one document is a competitive advantage. 3, lead with a skills or core competency section right near the top. Easy for the software to scan, and just as important, easy for a human doing their actual 7-second skim to catch at a glance. 4, update your dates and your specificity, not just your titles. A role listed as, say, 2008 to 2015 with no real detail underneath it will consistently underperform a role from the same era with 3 or 4 sharp, result-specific bullets under it. Recency signals matter, and they can apply even inside an older role if you write it right. 5, don't fight LinkedIn's algorithm. Feed it. Weekly activity, posting something real, leaving a thoughtful comment, engaging with content from your target companies measurably increases how often you surface in recruiter searches. Far more than a beautiful written but static profile that nobody's touched in 2 years. I also want to say something honest about AI and the interviewing process itself, because it's showing up more and more. Some companies now use AI tools for initial screenings, for the initial screening step, a chatbot conversation, or an asynchronous video interview where you're recording answers to a screen instead of a person. My advice, treat that step with exactly the same seriousness as a live interview. Prepare your specific examples in advance. Use the same language from the job posting. Don't let yourself think, it's just a bot. It doesn't really count. Because functionally, right now, it very much counts. And I want to be honest about the limits of all this too, because I don't want to oversell it. None of what I just walked through guarantees you a callback. That's not the promise. The point isn't gaming a system or tricking software into liking you. The point is removing unnecessary friction so that your real legitimate qualifications actually get in front of a human being who can evaluate them fairly. That's it. That's the whole goal. So here's where this segment lands. You're not adapting to these systems because they're fair. You're adapting because refusing to cost you interviews you are genuinely qualified for reasons that have nothing to do with your ability to do the job. Okay, let's name the age bias and then outmaneuver it. I'm not going to soften this next part, and I'm not going to hedge it with a lot of now this doesn't apply everywhere disclaimers. Let's just say the true thing plainly, because I think naming it clearly is actually the most useful thing I can do for you in this whole episode. Age bias in hiring exists. Yes, it's illegal and it happens anyway, constantly, usually wearing a disguise. Culture fit, not the right growth trajectory for where you're headed, overqualified. You've probably heard one of those phases directed at you already. And some part of you already suspected what was actually underneath it. I'm confirming that suspicion out loud on purpose because pretending this isn't real doesn't protect you from it. It just burns energy that should be going into strategy instead. So let's do the reframe. The goal is not to prove them wrong. That's an argument you can't win because you can't out argue an unspoken assumption in someone else's head. The goal is make the bias irrelevant by making the value undeniable before it ever has room to operate. Here are 5 practical countermeasures: real, specific, doable this week. 1, energy and currency show up before your qualifications do. In a first impression, a video call, the opening paragraph of a cover note, your vitality reads before the content of your resume does. This is not about hiding your age. Don't do that. And honestly, you mostly can't. It's about leading the forward-looking language instead of retrospective language. Here's what I built in the first 90 days, not here's what I did in the last 20 years. Same substance, completely different signal. I was hired as an executive in my mid 60s. During the onboarding, The COO approached me and said, I had no idea you were that old. That was not a testament that this bald dude looked young. It was a testament to the energy I brought to the whole process. Two, address why now, why this, before anyone has to ask it. A short, confident line in a cover note or an opening in an interview answer about why this specific move, why this specific company, why now, headed off proactively, quietly, disarms the unspoken questions sitting underneath a lot of these interviews. Are they just coasting toward retirement? You answer it before it's asked, and it stops being a live question in the room. Three, do a practical audit of your materials. Unglamorous, but it matters. If a graduation year is more than 15 or 20 years old, you can leave it off. It's not lying, it's simply not required information. Your LinkedIn photo should be current, not a decade old, not the one from a conference where you had significantly more hair and significantly less wisdom. Early career roles from way back can be trimmed down to a single line each instead of a paragraph. None of this is deception. It's just not volunteering information that invites a bias you don't need to invite. Four, target the right rooms in the first place. Not every company or industry is fighting age bias equally. Some organizations genuinely actively value tenure and steadiness. It's part of their culture, not despite your age, but because of it. Part of your strategy should be identifying and prioritizing those employers rather than spending all your energy fighting uphill against every single opportunity equally. Five, when it happens anyway, and it will at least once, don't personalize it. If you get passed over for a biased reason, that says something true about that organization's blind spot. It does not say anything about your work. The healthiest move every time is to redirect the energy towards the next conversation instead of replaying the last one in your head for a week. I want to close this segment by giving you some credit because I don't think you need convincing that bias exists. You already knew. What you needed was permission to say it plainly and then a next step so that you're not just sitting there stuck in resentment about it. So here it is. You cannot control every bias in every room you walk into. You can absolutely control how undeniable you make yourself before you walk in. Walk in is the answer. Last phase, and I promise, you've repositioned your value, you've reactivated your network, you've gotten past the system standing between you and a human being. Now you're in the interview. And this is where mid-career candidates either choose the deal or quietly talk themselves out of it without even realizing that's what they're doing. Here's the core shift I want you to make. Stop answering interview questions like you're narrating a biography. Start answering them like a consultant diagnosing a problem. Let me give you an actual framework because I want this to be usable, not just a nice sentiment. Before the interview, do the extra layer of research most people skip. Don't just research the company generally. Research the specific problem this role probably exists to solve. Read between the lines of the job posting. Check recent news. Look for leadership changes, a new initiative, a department that's clearly scaling. That problem, the real one underneath the job title, is what the interview is actually about, even if no one says it out loud. Inside the interview, for every single answer you give, land the plane. Don't just tell the story from your past. Connect it explicitly to your present problem, to their present problem. Here's what the experience means for how I'd approach this role. Say that sentence or something like it out loud in the room. Don't make the interviewer do the translation work for themselves in their head. You're hoping they connect the dots the way you intended. Most of the time, they won't. Do it for them. And flip the question dynamic. Instead of only asking, what's the culture like here? Which is a fine question, but a passive one. Ask something like, what does success in this role look like in the 6-month mark? And what's gotten in the way of that in the past? That single question signals that you're already thinking like the person sitting in the seat, not like someone hoping to be picked. Quick word on money and title. Because I see mid-career candidates undersell themselves here constantly, often out of a kind of misplaced gratitude for even being considered. Know your number before you're in the room. Say it with the same steady, matter-of-fact tone that you'd want to hear from someone you were paying to advise you. Not apologetic, not padded with qualifiers, just steady. Here's the through line for this whole episode. And I want to land it clearly before we close out. Everything we covered today, repositioning your value, reactivating your network, beating the system, naming the bias, and outmoving it, every bit of that exists for one person to get you into that room. Once you're actually there, you already know how to do the rest of this. You've been solving problems and proving value for 25 years. This is just the first time in a while you've had to say it out loud on purpose to a stranger. You can do that. If you take one thing from today, take this. A mid-career job search is not lesser, sadder version of the search you ran at 28. It's a different discipline with a different set of rules, and you are more than capable of learning it because learning new rules under pressure is exactly what got you this far in the first place. Do the audit, reactivate 5 people this week, actually do it. Don't just plan to. Clean up your formatting and, for the love of all that is holy, retire the decorative resume border. Say the quiet part about bias out loud to yourself once and then get back to work anyway. If this episode helped you, do me a favor. Send it to one person you know who's in the middle of a search right now and could use it more than another. Thoughts and prayers text. That's just how this show grows, one forward at a time. I'm Rich Jones, and this has been Live Without an Expiration Date. Go build something that doesn't expire.